Hello, welcome to a slightly shorter retrospective this time. I'm going to be looking at a particular game which I grew up playing as a kid on the Commodore 64. It's not the best game in the world, but it's one that evokes a lot of fond memories for me. And in particular, the way I discovered this game was it wasn't too long after I first got my Commodore 64. It was say about early 1990. We didn't have a huge amount of games at the time. I was just discovering second-hand shops and slowly picking up one or two titles a week. And then one day my dad went into work, and there was a chap at work whose son was getting rid of all his Commodore 64 games because his machine had broke. And I think he managed to get them for this box of games for like £10 or £20. It wasn't much money at all back then. It was quite a crazy amount of money. And I remember Dad coming back with this massive sort of fruit box, cardboard box thing full of games, and there was like classics in there like Commando and Who Dare Wins 2, Way the Exploding Fist and Summer Games 2 and so on. And I just spent a couple of weeks getting through all these games. It was crazy. I was like a pig in shit, literally a pig in shit, playing through all of these titles, and there were some real gems in there. And eventually, I mean, Trollie Wallie wasn't the first game that stood out for me, but I mean, it's hard not to spot it because it's got this like bright green, almost luminous sort of casing with it. I think it is actually luminous, actually. But it's got a very strange image on the front of this sort of Pac-Man with legs and with like a Donald Trump style wig. Yeah, eventually I got to this game and I was quite intrigued by it because there was no kind of like no sort of loading screen on the back or anything like that. It just tells you that you're kind of controlling Wally in this supermarket, and you've got to collect these 40 items across this supermarket environment and but you can only carry 5 items at a time, and so on, and that was it. So didn't have any idea what sort of game it was going to be, if it's going to be a platform or a maze game or whatever you say. That was part of the excitement though, growing up, is having that, not knowing what to expect. So you could either get a shit game or the most amazing game ever. So we're going to show you it now. Just try and jump straight into it. So I'm going to quickly load from the tape version so I can show you the loading screen quickly. But I'll kind of speed through it a little bit because it's quite a long loader. Here we go. Okay, so there's the loading screen. So this is what I would have been greeted with when I first loaded it. So still, it's obviously in a supermarket still because you've got like the shopping trolley, but there's no real clue still about how the game's going to play out, what it looks like. You just see this yellow character, so I'm assuming I'm going to be, could even be a Pac-Man clone. Who knows? But so this game was this was developed by a chap called Andrew Chalice, who did quite a few games for Interceptor Software back in the early 80s and mid 80s, I think, as well. And this particular title, he got his sister Claire to draw all the graphics for him. And what was quite nice was that in recent years I managed to track down Andrew and exchange a couple of emails, because this particular game I do have fond memories of playing, and I wanted to let him know how much I enjoyed the game. So he's quite chuffed to hear it. That someone liked the game. I don't think he's had many people sort of get in touch about Trollie Wallie in particular. But anyway, it is a very bizarre game, as you'll see in a minute. It's kind of typical of games of that era back in 1984 time. People had a lot more creative freedom back then. They weren't restricted by these large scale companies and having to do like another Call of Duty game, for instance. They could pretty much almost do what they want, and some of the content as a result was quite out there. It's quite wacky, and occasionally it didn't always work. You got some real rubbish titles, but then you did get some gems. So here's Trollie Wallie. So got a pretty decent title screen actually, where he builds up the title of the game. You can see Trollie's. This is the main character that we're seeing now. It's not yellow at all. He looks now more like a sort of Zippy from Rainbow sort of character with his red trousers on as well. So I don't know why he's changed to orange all of a sudden, but anyway. There's a pretty cool rendition of Popcorn by Hot Butter, which is done by who's the musician? Oh, it tells you on the title screen. Schoolboy error. So Graham Hansford. So he's done this really cool rendition of Popcorn, and I think it changes partway through to Oxygen by Jean-Michel Jarre. Okay, I'm sure they didn't get a license for the music either, but that's another thing. That early 80s games used to riff quite a lot of stuff without permission. Okay, so first loaded up the game, started playing it, and discovered it was a platformer. And I love platformer games. This one though is absolutely rock hard and quite cruel as well. If I jump over that funny grass stuff on the ceiling now, I'll just die straight away, and that's a life lost straight away. So it's a pretty harsh game. And I remember I think I was stuck on this area for quite a bit. I couldn't get past this floor that kept disappearing at first. I mean, I was only probably about 8 at the time, 7 or 8 when I first loaded it up, and still pretty shit at games. But we get that switch and we can open up part of this supermarket, which looks nothing like a supermarket. It looks more like some kind of derelict building with a strange sort of backward jumping cubert. So yeah, the aim of it is you've got these 40 items to collect, and you can only collect a maximum of 5 at a time. And when you've got all 5, you then have to get yourself to the other end of the map, which is a fairly large map, and then get to this till. But the problem is you've got these really harsh jumps, which you can see there. So before you're even likely to get 5 items, you're probably going to be dead when you first start playing this. It'll take a lot of practice to get good at it, and you need to be good at your sort of pixel precision jumping, like in Manic Miner, to get far in it. But there was something about it. Even though I was rubbish at it and I didn't get particularly far, I don't know if it's the music or what. I just found myself coming back to it quite a bit and loading it up on a regular basis. It was generally, I mean, I played some frustrating games when I was a kid, and often I'd get so pissed off with them I wouldn't load them up again. But this one seemed to be different. I don't know, maybe it's... I just don't know, actually. I can't think why I got so attached to the game. If it was just the main character, maybe, and because he looked like Zippy. I liked Rainbow at the time, and maybe that was it. I don't know. Okay, so I've got 5 items now, but I doubt very much I'm going to get to the end to kind of go to the cashier. I'll see if I can. One little thing I liked about the game as well is the little scrolling messages in the background, which are there's multiple little scrollers dotted around, and I mean that just seemed quite bizarre. I don't think later games, like in an Ocean Software game, you wouldn't see anything like that at all in the background of Batman the movie, for instance. But back then, with that creative freedom, you could do things like that. You could have these strange characters that made no sense. I mean, why are these characters doing in a supermarket anyway? I have no idea. Okay, I think I'm screwed. Yep. Okay, so it's a rock hard game. It's very hard to see everything. I mean, you even get teased with that last item there, and I've never got to that last item at the top without having to cheat. And funnily enough, that's exactly what I'm going to do now. So, a good friend of mine, Vinny Mainolfi, he still does it occasionally, but he used to do a lot of what are called crazy hacks, which are, so once he got into a bit of coding and stuff, he learnt how to kind of hack games and put cheat modes built into the titles. And for quite a while he was like loading up these different games, putting his own intros on the front and putting built-in cheats, which was really a lot of fun. I used to test a lot of them for him. And the great thing was, I could sort of go through the back catalogue of games that I grew up with and make suggestions to Vinny about what game to hack next. And I think Trollie Wallie was one of those that I was desperate for a cheat where you could just walk through walls and be completely invincible, and that's exactly what he built. So I'm going to load that up now. If you want to find this crazy hack for yourself, if you do search for Vinny Mainolfi crazy hacks and or Hackersoft, you should find his website with all the downloads on. And while you're at it, if you haven't already, then check out Vinny's brilliant magazine called Freeze 64, which is a fantastic magazine that he produces almost monthly at the moment. And I still can't believe how quick he produces each copy, and they're really high quality as well. But this is Trollie Wallie, which was done way back in 2012, which is crazy because it only seemed like yesterday. And we've got all these cheat modes that we can use. So we've got a built-in cheat mode, freeze timer, walk through walls, high jump as well, which is all great. So yeah, when he produced this, I could look around the map properly for the first time, which was quite exciting. But it will allow me now to just, so I'm not like trying to play the game properly, because I won't get to the end, so I can tell you that for a fact. I can try and show you a bit more of the map quickly. So I'm going to turn the cheat mode on, turn on walk through walls, and I'm going to put a high jump on as well for the hell of it. So I've got this mega jump. I can pretty much get all around the level really quickly. I mean, this is a lot of fun. I mean, to some people this kind of does spoil games a little bit, but I think if you've played a game enough and you've enjoyed it properly without cheats, and you haven't got very far, or you've completed it or whatever, then I don't think there's any harm in it. I mean, to me it adds it's something a bit extra to a game, especially the ability of walking through walls or having the mega jumps. Sometimes it does some interesting things like get you outside of the map or in areas that you're not meant to go in, and I kind of find that quite exciting. I really enjoy that kind of thing with games, is to go places where you're not meant to go. Okay, so we're going to go down, should be near the checkout now. So I've got 5 items, so I can't collect any more. So here, for instance, I'm behind this, here's a till, and I'm at the other side of it. And if you used to play the game properly, you would never be able to get to this bit. You wouldn't be able to... So you see, I can't collect that trolley because it's not a collectible object. I just kind of, I don't know, I find it quite funny or quite cool that you can go in these areas you're not meant to be. So now walking on top of the till. Here we go. So we pay for the items and pretty much off we go to get the next 5. We have to do this a number of times. Wonder if we can get the... maybe show the end sequence. I think he had that as a cheat mode in there. Okay, so I've gone off the screen now, so I've broken it a little bit, so I'm getting back a minute. Ah, there we go. So yeah, with that super jump, I can pretty much jump up, get that last item if I want to. I mean, the favourite game that Vinny hacked, where you could go through walls and go through everything, was probably the Dizzy games, because as a kid when I played, I'll do a Dizzy retrospective at some point. As a kid, you used to get to a certain screen, I'd always used to wonder what was behind it, and often there was nothing behind it, which I'd later discover it was just like a blank screen. They hadn't drawn a map or anything like that. So, but you used to kind of daydream a little bit about what might be behind it, if there's like 100 coins or something, or some kind of treasure chest or something, or magical screen with all these new characters or something. So as an adult, it was a lot of fun to be able to actually go beyond that screen, and even though there was nothing there to see, it was kind of scratching a bit of an itch. Okay, let's quickly see if I can find the end sequence a minute. So I'm going to take that down. Okay, all 40 items, so if we press 0 we can do that apparently. I can't remember what happens. Oh, that's all 40 items, that's the end sequence. There we go. That was easy. Okay. So that was Trollie Wallie. So it's another game which isn't the best game in the world. It's an obscure game, or a fairly obscure game. It's a quite early 64 game, and it's sort of that era of sort of Manic Miner and all the early Jeff Minter stuff. Where people had a lot of creativity, they could pretty much produce whatever they wanted. And Trollie Wallie's one of the good ones that come out of it. I think it is a fun little game. It is rock hard, and unless you're like a superhuman, you're probably not going to complete it without cheats. So yeah, to me, the reason why I load it up every so often is, of course, the nostalgia and just loading up and being reminded of that time when I got all those games from my dad and sitting through and playing them. And I get that every time I kind of hear that popcorn music rendition that plays. It's good. So yeah, if you haven't seen it before or played it, then go for it. Just check it out and see what you think for yourself. Check the Crazy Hack out by Vinny as well, which I highly recommend, especially if you get bored of it pretty quick. It kind of opens up the game if you want to kind of just explore it and see what the map's like and that kind of thing. So that's it for the next retrospective. So I think the next one I might even do a Dizzy game actually. Now I've been talking about it, I quite fancy sort of talking through them. So I'll see you next time.